To bring a community fly problem under control involves a basic plan of attack that can be applied to any community. This plan divides into education, informing the people and gaining their support. Second, sanitation, eliminating the fly breeding sources. And third, chemical control, the application of spray materials. Beyond this basic plan, however, each community presents individual problems of its own. This film is the case history of a fly control project in a town that we shall call Jonesville. The citizens were proud of their town. They kept their lawns mowed and their houses well painted. Jonesville was a clean-looking town, and that's why the people couldn't understand where the flies came from. The flies that plagued them all summer long. The flies that carried disease organisms to their dining rooms and kitchens. Flies mean filth, and Jonesville wasn't a slovenly town. So that was the attitude that faced the state fly control specialists and the local public health men who teamed up to work on the problem. Their first job was to get the facts on fly breeding and distribution throughout the community. A map of the city was divided into the various types of districts: better residential section, substandard residential, the downtown business and market districts, and so forth. A grill survey was made of each of these areas to get a working measurement of the number of flies present. This served as a starting index from which the progress and effectiveness of the control program could be determined. The entomologists placed fly traps at several locations in the community to learn exactly what species were present. This gave information on breeding sources and affected the choice of insecticides to be used. Meanwhile, the sanitarians were surveying the community for fly breeding sources. These were classified in 4 major groups: exposed garbage, animal shelters, industrial waste, and insanitary outdoor toilets. The results of the survey showed that Jonesville had a real fly problem on its hands. So the program entered its first stage: education of the people. The facts were presented to a committee composed of the Jonesville Public Health Officer, members of the local service clubs, the secretary of the Ladies' Garden Society, and representatives of other civic organizations who were influential in the community. The citizens of Jonesville soon realized that their town wasn't as clean as they had supposed. All over town, garbage was emptied into containers waiting the once-a-week collection. But most of the containers were without covers and, well, look. Several families in the better residential district owned riding horses. The stables gleamed with white paint, and the horses were well groomed. But the piles of manure were crawling with fly larvae. On the edge of town was a small cannery, and waste material was allowed to run off onto the ground. Here also was a source of millions of flies. Few of Jonesville's citizens realized that a considerable number of privies existed right in the middle of town. Many of these privies swarmed with flies, and it was a pretty disturbing thought that after walking and feeding on the filth of the privies, these same flies entered nearby homes and restaurants to walk over food and tableware. All of this was an unpleasant revelation to the people of Jonesville, and they wanted action at once. Radio stations and newspapers were easily induced to spread the information on fly breeding sources in the community. The education program was carried to the classroom, where the children were shown that flies can carry disease organisms from filth and garbage to the food we eat. Civic groups took up the problem with the city officials, asking that new laws be passed or old ones revised to clean up the community. Soon it was all-out war on flies. The Boy Scouts were recruited to tack up posters and hand out literature. More and more, the people of Jonesville were stopping to think about the fly problem, for each was shown that it was his problem, his own personal and individual responsibility. When the education program was well underway, space spraying machines were brought into action. These spectacular machines showed the people that something active was being done. And though expensive to operate, they did give prompt relief from the flies. Also, residual sprays and larvicides were applied in severe problem areas, again for immediate relief. But the control men knew that while the use of chemicals was necessary early in the program, the results would only be temporary. For permanent control, the emphasis was placed on sanitation, the elimination of fly breeding sources. The local merchants cooperated by offering good quality standard garbage cans at reasonable prices. The housewives of Jonesville were quick to get behind the program. They had been shown that wrapping garbage saves the unpleasant task of washing the can, prolongs the life of the can, and reduces odors. And wrapped garbage in a covered can is virtually sure proof against flies. The owners of horses and other animals began to store the manure in covered cans until the garbage collectors picked it up on their regular schedule. Restaurant and market owners realized that using covered refuse cans was good citizenship and good business, too. By now, garbage was collected twice a week in the residential sections and daily in the market and restaurant districts. This didn't give the flies time to breed before the garbage was removed. But what good was it to remove the garbage, then haul it to an open dump on the very edge of town? A mass production of flies within easy flying distance of Jonesville. This was a problem for the mayor and the city councilman. But Jonesville isn't a big city. We can't afford an expensive incinerator. You don't need one. The sanitary landfill is cheap and effective. Each day's garbage collection is compacted by a bulldozer and covered with a 2-foot layer of earth, fly-proof and rat-proof. A waste of land? Not at all. When the landfill tracks are all used up, several communities have converted them into airports or public parks. Yes, the landfill is the practical and economical answer to community garbage disposal. Turning to the next problem, the fly control specialists, working with the local health department, began a concerted drive against Jonesville's insanitary privies. Where property was not yet served by sewers, homeowners were required to put in septic tanks, sanitary and fly-proof. But since this was a direct expense, the people were allowed reasonable time to make the installation. Industrial plants agreed to haul their own waste to the new sanitary landfill, a voluntary action that materially reduced the fly population on the fringe area of Jonesville. Certain locations, like the stockyards, are problem sites in any community. In Jonesville, these difficult areas were treated regularly with chemicals, residual sprays, and larvicides. By the middle of the second year, the fly control program was giving very definite results. The continued grill surveys showed a satisfactory decline in fly populations in all parts of the city. Then one day, in one of the residential areas, the fly count shot suddenly upward. The district was inspected block by block in a search for this new breeding source. Garbage cans were all in good condition, and all were kept covered. The privies had long ago disappeared from this section. There were no animal shelters here, no exposed animal waste. Or was there? A pile of manure to fertilize a home garden. This was the source of the new outbreak. And that is why community fly problems are never completely eliminated, only controlled. Routine vigilance must continue. keeping a check on possible breeding sources, and using insecticides for the occasional small outbreaks. Today, Jonesville has won its major victory over domestic flies. But it wasn't easy. You have seen only the highlights of the program. But fly control can be accomplished in any community by applying the same basic plan that was used in Jonesville. First, survey the community to estimate the number of flies that are present. This is the gauge of the progress and effectiveness of the program. Locate and evaluate the 4 principal sources of fly breeding: exposed garbage, animal shelters, industrial waste, and insanitary privies. Assemble this information as the basis for the detailed plan of attack. Gain the confidence and cooperation of the people. Without it, you're licked before you start. Show them how they themselves can go a long way toward eliminating the sources of flies. Work closely with city officials, helping them to work out the more expensive municipal problems. Basic sanitation must be emphasized for the permanent control of flies. But use insecticides for immediate relief and as a supplementary measure in the more difficult problem areas. That is the basic plan of approach. Consider the problem, plan carefully, and remember, community fly control is possible anywhere.